The jig that Sam brought has the ability to do not just the outside of a round object, but the inside. We haven't figured out yet whether we could do the inside of this ball and keep it at a 16th or whatever. Not on this one, but all the way through. I don't think we can, but
it's a challenge.
Yeah. So I'll continue to do what I do, eyeball it here. Still got a little extra thickness down in that area. I don't know, I suppose you could take the time to mark where you got the thickness, but I kind of just do it. I think for tonight that's close enough. Now the next step would be pull your mic off. My back. The next step would be to do the same with this piece, but you've already seen me do one, so I'm not going to do it twice, since we aren't going to end up turning the ball anyhow. And then after that, I would true up the ends on this, and then I would glue them back together. And generally, I glue them back together and put a clamp around them and let them sit overnight, and then come back, and then it's time for the ball jig. I just use regular carpenter's glue, yeah, yellow glue.
Sit overnight between the tailstock and headstock?
Yes. This one is not perfect, but for tonight it's close enough. So if you want to pass that around, you can kind of take a look and see how close we are on accuracy there. Probably not all that close, but the next step then is to employ the ball jig. And for that, I generally go back to turning between live centers. I'm guilty. We'll get to the decorating in a couple of minutes and talk about some of the alternatives, some of the ways I do some of that. Well, we'll go with this one. You want to always try to preserve your marks on the ends for your center. No, I'm going to spin that on there and take it off with my skew.
That's skillful.
I'm sorry, John.
You're just saying
Well, whose lathe is this? Oh. Okay.
Are those glued together with just a butt joint, or is there a tape?
No, it's just a butt joint. Just like what you'll see lift up. Okay.
Whatever works.
Okay. Someplace I used to have the template for that ball, but I don't see it right now. So we'll go this way. And what I'm now is just getting a reading on the diameter. And so that I'll know about where the ends of that hole are. You divide that by 2. Somebody can. Tell you what I'll do. I'll do it like this. I think that's about right. Okay, I'm going to use the ball jig, but remember that I told you when you start using the ball jig, you're just nibbling maybe a 1/16 of an inch off at a time. So what I do is to remove as much of that wood as before I go to the ball jig. Okay. So I'm going to just take some of the excess wood off so that if we were going to use the ball jig, John taught me. Now we can continue to take that on down. But I'll stop it there. We'll do the other end so it doesn't look so wonky. Take smaller bites. Okay, you get the point. What I'm doing is getting some of the wood off just so that when I get to the ball jig, I don't have as much nibbling to do with the ball jig because it only takes a bit at a time. So for demonstration purposes, I'll probably stop there. But the next thing to do would be the ball jig. Now, thinking about what I left at home that I didn't bring, once you get that ball down, and you've seen it like when Todd did his sphere demonstration, you end up with some of this on each end. So once I get this part perfectly round, because remember there is a hole in there, once we get this perfectly round around that hole, as far down as you can go with your ball jig, then the next thing that I do is either using vacuum chuck or cup chucks on the ends of it, turn it, and then start taking the ends off. Sometimes I'll take it to my bandsaw, and of course I use a jig to do that, but as opposed to a round object on your bandsaw. And cut the ends down as close as I dare, and then turn it sideways and spin it this way and start taking the excess wood off till you have a ball. And then I go through that same operation to sand it, get all the tool marks off, and make it look like a nice, smooth, round ball. So once you get that far, you've got that nice, smooth, round ball. Now your imagination comes into play. And that's with the decorating part, which is the part Sharon likes best, isn't it? And in fact, I do too. So let's talk a little bit about decorating. This one is one I did this week. Once I got the ball smooth, the next thing is to transfer objects on there, whatever it is you want to do. I use the internet to find pictures that I want. I was looking for butterflies on this one, so I went to butterfly drawings. I happen to use Bing, so it'll give you thousands. Pick out some that you like, and then you can size them to whatever size you might want. And if you want to take a look at those, you can. But I'm sure you can find ones that you like or maybe even like better. To get the butterfly onto the ball, there's a couple of ways of doing it. There's a company called Wellburn Gourd Company, and it's out in California. And one of the things that they sell is a transfer paper for burning. And you can, it's printable, so you can run it through your printer. And someplace here I have one, yeah, right here, that I ran through the printer. This is on a inkjet printer. And you print on the layer that that is adhesive. Now, I stuck a piece of paper in there just so you can see it, but these are the butterflies that I used on that ball that I just showed you. This is the first time I've used it. I didn't like it much. I think it would work quite well on flat surfaces, but it doesn't stretch enough to make it work on a ball. So your next alternative is to use graphite paper, and that's kind of you hold your object up there, put this on whatever you want to transfer it to, and there's graphite on one side. You can get this at any art store, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, that sort of thing. It does come off on your fingers. I don't know whether you've all seen this, but you're welcome to pass it around and take a look at it. The other way is you put your objects on with a pencil in your hand. And if you feel the urge to go freehand, you can burn them on too. And these were a couple of the early balls I did. These are not hollow. These are solid balls, and I was kind of just doing them for practice. But then after I got them, I figured, well, might as well put something on them. So these were all done pretty much freehand with my wood burner, and then did some painting and coloring on them. I used ink pens, and in some cases I used the metallic artist's paint on them, and that's kind of fun to do. Then beyond that, this again is one that I did freehand. Dragonflies are not hard to draw. You can probably all draw a dragonfly. And then from there I kind of just went nuts and did whatever I wanted to with the piercing and the coloring of the dragonflies. This particular ball is mesquite. And one of the things that is a little strange about it is that this is right down the center of the trunk of the tree. But being mesquite, which is pretty stable, you can see that it still held its shape pretty nicely, even as it aged and dried.
You ever try to widen up your before you transfer it?
Wadding up,
Take it, widen it up. You know, have little creases in it.
Yeah.
And it will have around the top.
yeah,
It won't be exact, but it will follow the contour.
yeah. Well, I remember you saying that at one time. And I should have remembered it when I was doing it, but no, I actually haven't done that. This is another one where probably the only thing I did with a template on it was to do the circles so that these were all about a uniform size. And then again, I got pretty wild here with the piercing, because this ball is pretty light. You got to hang on to it or it'll float on up to the ceiling. Well, maybe not. Here's another one that I did kind of early, and these are dragonflies. I'd say the piercing on here could use some help, but again, you're welcome to look at it. And I free-handed that on and then burned it. The pattern goes around over the seam in the balls, because one of the things I always want to do is not be able to have anybody tell where it is. Actually, if you take that ball and set it on the floor,
This one?
yeah,
You want me to do it?
yeah, go ahead. Don't step on.
No. Oh,
Okay, now you know where the seam is, because one side is always a bit heavier than the other, and if you do the same thing, you'll see that one side will roll to the bottom. So I didn't get my two hemispheres quite uniform, but nobody cares.
not what everybody loves.
So that'll tell you where the seam is, because it'll be on the horizontal. When it came to rest on the floor, the seam will be on the horizontal to the floor. Now this one I mentioned is the latest one that I did, and I airbrushed these butterflies on, which is the first time I've tried that on one of the balls. To do that, I used a really good airbrusher. Probably wouldn't have had to, but I used Frisket to, did I pass this one around? No. I used Frisket, which is a masking material, and the masking material is also pretty stretchy, so you can take this, put it over the image that you've already put on the ball, probably best if you've burned it on the ball, and then you can take a razor blade and cut around whatever it is, wherever you want your masking line. So I put this over the butterflies, then I took a razor blade, cut the outline of the butterfly out, and then peeled everything away that wasn't butterfly, and then used the airbrush on that, just because I with my airbrush skills. I wasn't sure where it was going to all go. But this stuff is available again at any art store or Dick Blick or any places that sell airbrush and airbrush supplies. But I like that technique for protecting the areas that I didn't want to paint quite well, and that's stretchy enough that you can use it on a round object. That's just about all I've got to tell you about hollow balls.
Is there any particular wood to avoid?
Well, pine and softwoods. Softwoods you just don't do well with them for the same reasons that you don't want to make your bowls out of them. But I haven't found anything else.
You want them very dry.
Yeah, you do want dry wood. Yes. One other thing. I'm always interested in how people got interested in wood turning. And when I was growing up, my grandfather worked for Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois. It's now Rock Island, all right, Augustana University. And he was in the maintenance department. And he had a big wood shop, and he repaired furniture and put on new locks on things. In his wood shop, among other things, not his wood shop, but their wood shop, he had a lathe. And probably wasn't a very high-paid job, so often when I was a kid, we would get homemade things, or my mother would, for Christmas. And this happens to be a bowl that my grandfather turned probably 70 years ago. If you look at it, you'll see it's got tool marks. You'll notice that the base doesn't look like it goes with the rest of it, because someplace in the moves over the years that I've had this, the base got broke off. And so just this last week, I took a piece of sycamore and turned a base to put under it. So kind of the message there is, I could have taken some of the tool marks out, but they were his, so I left them. Keep on turning, keep giving them to your relatives and your sons and your daughters, and maybe 70 years from now, legacy will be that they'll pull up something that says, my grandpa, John Horn, turned this 70 years ago. But I'll pass that around too if you'd like to look at it.